Welcome to Don't Be Caged by Your Age, Debra Morrison. I'm so happy you're here to share your insights and wisdom to help folks thrive after 65. How you doing?
I'm great and so delighted to be with you. Thanks so much.
Listener, Debra is a financial strategist, TEDx speaker, a certified grief coach, and a best-selling author who helps women transform grief into financial independence and thrive with confidence at this stage of life. Her two best-selling books are Common Sense Money Guide for Women, and one we will be highlighting today especially, My Husband Died, Now What? A Widow's Guide to Grief, Recovery, and Smart Financial Decisions. And I'm so excited to share with you how she's thriving and serving the world today. But before we get started, Debra, you know we're all about aging out loud and proud on the Don't Be Caged by Your Age podcast. Please let folks know your age and where you live.
I always love how you introduce that. It's so rich. And my age is 69. I'm proud of every moment of it. And I live in northern New Jersey and also a little bit in Florida.
So, Debra, as you look back over your wild and precious life, what experiences or turning points led you to become a financial industry expert? And specifically for women, you have some really great origin stories, right? About how you got started, who influenced you initially, which was the perfect foundation for what you're doing today.
Right. Well, I was raised on a humble 100-acre beef cattle farm, and we worked very hard and we ate well. And I saw that the small community and so forth was rich in its own regard. And yet I always had this curiosity. I have really endless curiosity. And so my aunt on my mom's side, her sister, was very, very successful realtor and lived, North New Jersey, right outside of Manhattan. And she came across the state of Pennsylvania because we were on the Ohio border, Pennsylvania Ohio border. She is from New Jersey. She comes across and brings us kids over, and she takes us to New York City and particularly to the New York Stock Exchange. I'm 8 years old and I'm looking down at all of that fist pumping and the shouting and the prices flashing and the paper tickets up to their calves. And I am simply mesmerized, frozen in time, literally had to be pulled away from the screen. And I said, as I left that screen to myself, I'm going to be part of that energy someday. You see, there weren't any white women or girls down there. No, I was not. That was not happening. And yet the energy with which that propelled that was the genesis of those actions was something I was wanting to explore. And my grandfather had been a stock market investor even during the Great Depression. And so he had handed and given to each of us grandchildren a few shares of 2 or 3 different stocks. And so he handed me these certificates of stock, and his hands were trembling. And he was not an emotional man. So I knew something beyond paper. That's just not paper there. And so I said to myself, I really want to understand the significance of those pieces of paper. And then the stock exchange visit and so forth and so on. And I said to myself, boy, I'm doing this, right? I don't even know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And then there was a little piece, I'm going to escape the farm because I really think I want to be of influence to people. And I didn't really see that coalescing with the rural environment. So both of them were good in their own right. Both of them had a time and a place. And so I went to college and studied business. And, this is a funny story. I actually went to high school and I enrolled in the business sector. No one was telling us anything. I mean, we were from the farm. We hardly went to the library. We were working, right? And so you had to really be exceptional then to keep up, as you might imagine. And so, I enrolled in business because I thought, business, that's what I want to be. I want to be in business, right? Well, I should have enrolled in academic because I really wanted to go to college. Well, I didn't know the difference. So I ended up in typing class and stenography and shorthand and all this stuff. Well, there was this teacher who was really kind of older. And at the time, we thought she was really old. Now she's probably my age, but she was older and a little bit dowdy. And she was teaching shorthand. Well, I'm the first day in shorthand, and I'm not getting it. And about 3/4 of the way through the class, I walked up to the front and I put the shorthand manual, the little book, on her desk. And I said, I shouldn't say her name, Mrs. So-and-so, I am withdrawing from this course. And I started to walk out the door. And she gets up and she walks out the door right behind me and she shuts the door and we're in the hall and she says, "What did you say?" And I said, "I am dropping this course." "This is your bread and butter course," she said. "You need this course." I don't know from whence this answer came because I wasn't smart enough to come up with it, but God gave me the words. And I said to her, "Mrs. So-and-so, I will have someone taking shorthand for me." I was like
Thank
in
you.
the 9th grade. Serious.
First of all, I just have to say, and listener, you may be feeling this way too. Don't you admire those folks who at a very young age always knew what they wanted to do? I was floundering oh, I could do this, I could do that. I love, Deborah, that you saw the energy on the stock exchange floor and went, yes, that's why I'm here. That excites me. I'm in it to win it with that. But then you had the chutzpah at the age of 13, 14, 15, right around there, to be able to say to a teacher, look, no, someone's going to be doing shorthand from what I'm telling them. They'll be taking shorthand for me. And to have that vision for yourself as a woman of power in an organization, not lording it over the person, but that's going to be your team player who's going to come in and they're going to be taking notes and doing all the things. I love it. What was her response? I can only imagine.
Her face just flushed red. She was horrified, and went right back in the. I walked down. I turned on my heel and I walked away, and she went right back. She slammed the door. I was like, "Oh my heart," And it was. I even was shaking. I was thinking, "Well, how did you have the nerve to say that?" And literally, I wondered to myself because it wasn't like I went to bed, put my head in the pillow, and thought, "I am so confident. I'm doing this." I mean, absolutely not. So stuff comes bubbling up, right? And I think if we keep the lid off, right, if we allow these instincts and this intuition, which I think especially women are hardwired with, I want us to be a friend to our intuition and to open that as a possibility, as at least another option from those that the world gives us, or our family, or socialization, a religion, whatever. So
That's absolutely right. I went to an all-women's MBA program. Can you imagine? First of all, these are the two women who founded it, Deborah, had been PhD professors at Harvard Business School. And they were tired of watching men taking over the classroom and discussions getting caught up in semantics. So first they pitched Wellesley College. Wellesley said no, so they went to Simmons, which is renowned for helping women get good, strong careers to take care of their families since the Civil War.
Indeed.
Right? That's when it started. So they were like, yeah, bring it on. And it was phenomenal. And that's where they busted myths all the time around women and numbers. It really bothers me when women, say, I don't do math or I don't do this. I said, excuse me, if I said that leather bag or leather coat or those shoes were 40% off, you'd know exactly what you were paying for them. So yes, you do have a head for numbers, but let's bust some of those myths because I am the chief financial officer of my family. As I tell my husband, don't worry about worrying your pretty little head about them pesky figures. That's out of Auntie Mame, anybody. I got this, don't worry. But many women, especially as they age, are told they aren't good with money. So let's bust some of those myths about older women and finances, because I know you've seen it all and you really help women be an authority around their money.
I do. And I was drawn towards, of course, I went to college, so I got a business administration degree. And then I wanted to learn investments, and they were like, "Oh, we're not going to put," they didn't say it this overtly, "We're not going to put money into a 21-year-old girl." And so they shuffled me over and said, "Why don't you sell life insurance?" And they thought I'd be out the door in 2.5 weeks, which is the average, I guess. And I said, "Well, I've heard of life insurance, but explain it all. Like, just explain it to me." And they did. And I thought to myself, wow, this is a product that keeps families together, businesses together, and typically an untimely death situation. And this is really valuable, right? And so I proceeded to sell it. And remind yourself, all the training was for sell within people 3 years of your age. I mean, no one's talking to me as a 21-year-old girl about their death. I mean, they're not even thinking about death, right? So I was always had to spread, extend the envelope beyond that which I was told and schooled. And I was selling to people 3 times my age, right? And so you can imagine there were a few hurdles. And yet I was persistent because I believed in, first first thing I did was I bought my own policy. Can't sell anything I haven't bought. And let's take that into life, gals. If we're selling a coaching program and yet we don't have the self-confidence and we're self-doubting and we think we're imposter complex, all that chitter chatter, shed the shame, come into our fullness. I mean, so I'm getting into the pulpit here. So the issue of the history of life insurance is I led the agency as a 21-year-old girl.
Oh, I love that something.
Not 1 year, 2 years. 2 years in a row.
Yeah, you have an extraordinary DNA package, let me tell you. But you hit on a really important part, which is, and this is something when I earned my MBA, folks, was from 1987 to 1989. And they were always telling us, look, what Emily's List found out about women was that they would have a bake sale. Whereas men, like, for example, giving to your alumni association, the guy would look over and say, well, how much is Joe giving? Well, I got to beat that. I got to match or beat that. And a woman is like, well, what can I bake for you? We've had this different idea about money, asking for money, selling. Women tend to be very uncomfortable with selling, and I'll raise my hand there too, instead of understanding that it's relationship building, which men understand, many men do. So I love that story. And I love that you were, I don't know if it was confidence so much as you were on purpose, and that purpose is what drove you, which was, I like this product, I like this idea, and I know it's going to lead me to what's next. And so how did you then navigate the landscape as you grew into being such a incredible financial industry expert?
Well, thanks. I had enough smarts to know that as a 21-year-old girl, I wasn't going to be accepted everywhere, and it was a stretch to think that I could even compete. And yet I knew that initials behind my name would be really good. And I had one gray hair at the time. I pulled it to the front, and I literally, like, when I slept at night, I would tape it there so it would just come as natural curly hair. No, I just wanted that straight gray hair right there. And then when my car petered out, like about 2 months into my life insurance career, and I had to push it in a snowstorm with a 3-piece suit on and high heels, and that wasn't pleasant. And I go in the office next morning, my car broke down, and my general agent said, why don't you go down to the BMW dealership down the road? And I was like, this is how far, no culture. I hadn't heard of BMW, but I soon learned. And so I go down there, and they take me on this drive and everything. And of course, my general agent, he knows that, if she buys a BMW, it's going to be about the cost of a mortgage. So she's going to have to sell a lot to make it right. And so I bought a BMW, right? Now, what does a 21-year-old girl do in terms of buying a BMW? What color do you think I bought?
Red?
You would have thought. No. Oh, no. Anthracite, deep gray. Yeah. I have my gray hair. I stepped out of that car. I looked 40 years old. I saved my money. I bought a rosewood attaché case, which was almost as heavy as people's filled attachés with nothing in it. And I strutted up to whoever's house because I was still visiting houses, right? And so the idea was always I needed some externalities to fit in because of the sexism. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to learn investments. And finally I went to I skipped the 6. I went right to the 7, which allows you to sell stocks. And because I was on a mission, I needed some credibility. And
and also you weren't going to get caged by your age.
Thank you.
Right? Because, it goes in both directions, folks. It can go right where we are today, and it can go right where, as a younger woman.
Thank you.
And don't put baby in a corner, folks.
If you do, put her back to the corner so she can see the whole room.
But I want to remind listeners now, we're talking 1979, 1980, because you're out in the world, and this is almost inconceivable to see a woman in this role at that time.
Oh, many at annual convention, I was the only woman in a double ballroom. Many a time. So there it was. And so I said, well, I want to get the CFP designation as certified financial planner. And I said, how long does it take? 3 years. I said, well, what is it? Is it every 6 months you take an exam? So you take the exam in the morning or the afternoon. And so it's over a 3-year period. And I'm like, has anybody ever done it in a year and a half? Like take an exam in the morning for level 1, take an exam in the afternoon for level 2. Next time, take an exam. So every 6 months, a year and a half. And they're like, no. I said, well, I'm doing that. And so I did it.
Why wouldn't
So
you?
I did it, and
Oh,
luckily, knock wood, I passed all of them. And so then I had the CFP, and that helped, right? And yet, always there was this sense by which when I could be in relationship, Annie, with people, then there was a receptivity that belied the age difference. See, and so once I opened my mouth and I was asking life insurance prospects to see their tax return, and they're like, "No one ever asked me to see your tax return." I said, "Well, they didn't have the imagination that money is all interconnected, and the tax code and the investment discipline are very intertwined. And I'm interested in saving you money all through." This was revolutionary in the early '80s, right? And so I began to be very, very focused on the fullness, if you will, of financial planning. And then I went to a financial planning firm, and it was I was just completely in ecstasy because it was the coalescing of all of the disciplines: legal,
yeah.
tax, goal setting, budgeting, risk management, insurance, investing, etc. And this was exactly where I wanted to live because it represented truth, right? The truisms. We can't just talk about today. We need to plan. And so I think I exited the vaginal canal as a planner.
Clearly, clearly. And you were busting myths from day one for women everywhere. But of course, you loved the financial planner role because you were under the umbrella of a well-known name, right? The brand was already there, but you are very independent as a financial planner. It's very entrepreneurship,
Yes,
right?
yes, exactly.
Oh,
Yes.
listeners, we're chatting with Debra Morrison, and you can learn more about her outstanding work in the world by visiting, get ready for this great website name, everybody, wecandoitwomen.com. I'm clinking to that.
Exactly. Well, I
Sure.
trademarked it for a reason. So, yeah. And this
Yes.
aspect of addressing women. So obviously, I'm selling life insurance, and a lot of men are dying, and women are being accosted, literally, by commission-hungry salespeople, and they have been sold unsuitable products. And when I got introduced to one woman who was local to my community, and I got introduced to her about 6 months after her husband had died, and she got sold this unsuitable annuity, and I was just horrified. It was just another example of how commission hungry and commission only salespeople, they don't have any duty to serve the client. I mean, this is like an anathema to my ears, right? Their duty is to themselves. A fee only fiduciary planner has one duty, and it's to each client they serve. I had 34 clients. I had 34 objectives and goals. And so when you understand that there are three types of financial advisors, you get to sense that the type that is going to be paid a commission on every insurance policy or annuity they sell doesn't have your best interest in mind. So she was out here talking to him, and it was a good friend that she had sat in the same pew with at church. This was the salt in the wound, in addition to the husband dying. He then comes with the life insurance check and says to her, "Betty, you don't want to take any risk with this money, do you?" And she's, of course, crying her eyes out, "No, no." And he has her sign the back, the full life insurance proceeds check, to buy a variable annuity on which he earned this huge commission. And now she's saying, "Well, where am I going to get the $40,000 for my car and to deal with my landscaping that I talked with you about?" And he was just like, boo, boo, he was already on his all expenses paid trip for two to Italy. And so I got introduced to her well after the fact, because you have a 30-day free look. No, we were well beyond that. And I had such compassion for this widow. And I said to her, "I will take your case on pro bono." And I did this with 3 widows for a year. I think hers was 13 months. You have to go to the insurance commissioner.
Mhm.
Now, remind yourself, I lived in a neighboring community to the salesperson. I didn't open the front door of my house for the next 2-3 years without expecting to see a shotgun, because he got charged back $68,000 in commission.
Which he deserved.
He deserved to get charged back. But the fact is, that kind of financial rape, and I don't mind calling it that because it is
It is. It absolutely
horrifying
is.
to me. Now, especially with older women who have a shorter timeline. And so younger women can afford to make a misstep. They got compounding and decades on their side. A wiser and 60 and wiser women, as I define it, it has a lesser timeline than a 40-year-old. And so it's incumbent upon us to make judicious decisions, good decisions. But how can we do that if we've never been trained? We've never been given the instruction book.
That's right. Not from day one, unless we had a good person in our life that helped us. And we often are carrying the emotional burden of everything. community, church, children, family. And so when someone says, hey, you've got a head for numbers, do it. And I can't take on one more thing. So I can get sometimes a little frustrated with women who want to turn a blind eye because they don't want to deal with it. How do you handle that? Because woman needs to educate herself. It's part of being independent. It's part of, even if you're in a love relationship, like I've been with my darling man for 40 years, it still behooves you to understand where the money goes and flows and to not buy into that old paradigm that is centuries old. And of course, further enhanced by Auntie Mame with you don't worry your head about them pesky figures. How do you talk to women about this? How do you empower them without shaming them?
Well, the truth of my experience is that, and I'm hesitant to say that because some people say, well, to tell you the truth, like the rest of the time I'm lying. No, my experience was, and so I self-correct right in the middle, right? You just sign it. So women would come into my office and they would, they'd all be hunched over and they say, I made a horrible mistake, Deborah. And they, okay. So I get my pencil out, my pen, my pad. I said, all right, Julie, tell me what happened. Well, in January 5th, 2001, I lost $4,000 in the stock market. Okay. In January 5th, 2001, you lost $4,000. What else? No, that's all. So I say, Julie, if that's all, we're golden. And and all of a sudden her posture changes, her spine gets erect.
Beautiful.
She comes closer to the desk and says, how do we get started? You see, women are hungry for the truth. We've been sold stuff. We don't have enough wherewithal to say to the salesperson, wait a minute, I don't think that really fits. First of all, you haven't even asked my goal, so how do you know? It's like going to a shooting target range and there's no targets out there. Just shoot in the air. That's like wasteful. So the fact is, I appeal to women on their hardwiring with common sense mantra, right? I say women are hardwired with common sense, and somehow, no, I was raised on a farm. Money has been over here in this separate silo, right? Because we're hardwired with common sense. We got the whole common sense thing. And then somehow we've moved, or society has moved money over here to some other vantage point, which we don't have access to. We got blinders on, and I want to move money right in here. And I say, first of all, if you have the same number of kids at dinner that you bade goodbye to on the school bus in the morning, first of all, you're in management. Second of all, if you run your cart through the grocery store with one or two kids hanging on it and sitting in it, grabbing things off, and you get out without having to, mop floors and pay for your due, you are in financial management. And so now we talk about how do people make money? And invariably they understand their mortgage, right? They understand their home. Why do people, Andy, have home ownership? Why has home ownership been a big American principle and mantra and mark of success? Well, that's because nobody questioned each other. Are we going to pay the mortgage this month, honey? No. Boom, 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 boom. It got paid. We didn't have the wherewithal to go in and jerk it out, you see. And so finally, when women say, oh, the stock market has gone up and I probably should be in there. And we put some money in the stock market, and then the pundits come on TV, which we're watching, and they say, the market is crashing and their veins are bulging. And then, it's the clear inference, Andy. You don't just sit there, do something. And what do people do? Boop, sell. I want to get out of here, right? So I say to women, if you were going to buy a new suit, and Macy's, or your favorite retailer, was going to have a suit sale next Tuesday, 40% off, likely you're not going to go there today and buy a suit unless you got a speaking engagement, something else. You're going to wait until the sale that they're giving you a glossy in the mail, or now on our cell phones, and say, you're going to save, 40% off on Tuesday. You're going to wait for that to happen. The thing is, when the stock market goes on sale, I don't want you bolting for the exit. As a matter of fact, I want you to look in the couch for mac and cheese money. I want you to go ahead and put that extra contribution into your 401k because you're buying low. Now women are like, right. Oh. You see, all someone has to do is translate it into English versus financiers. A woman does not need to know about the Standard & Poor or the Beige Book. I can tell them about it. It's not important. Like if I went to my mechanic and I said, Mike, my brakes are squishy. And he goes, hold on. And he goes back and he comes out with this book like this on automotive mechanics.
No, thank you.
Thanks, but no thanks. We need the answers to our questions once we have them. And the more we're told, no, that's not your thing. No, that's not your thing. Then we stop and we stop asking our questions. And then we think, oh, the internet is filled with financial information. I should get out of the should pile. No better. Nonsense. Any more than you don't take a drink from a fire hydrant. But what we do in coaching is we get a win for an older woman, for a mature woman. We get a win. We say, who gets paid first, the electric company or you? Well, honestly, the electric company. So we're going to set up a savings plan that right off the top, automatically, like your 401k contribution, your 403b contribution, gets put into your account. And you are not touching it. You are waiting for that to mature, but no one has told you that you ought not to be in the stock market for less than 5 years. Yes, you can flip stuff more quickly as you can real estate, but generally that's a longer hold. There are investments that are suitable for a shorter hold.
What I love that you're talking about too is you're working with the indoctrinated bias that women are raised with, which is this, you're a cost center. Here's your money. You got to budget it. You got to feed the kids. You got to run the household and that. Nobody's talking about investing. Nobody's talking about what it means to lose money. I mean, we know plenty of men who understand that sometimes they have to invest and it's a loss, or sometimes have to invest in their own education or their own capability in order to then leverage themselves in the economy, whatever that looks like. But women tend to look at that as bad and the loss of money versus happiness. I mean, sometimes you just have to let go of something, write it off, and know that you can replace it. So there's just all these different risks that women, especially as we age, are even more afraid of taking, because in the back of many single and widowed women is the, I'm going to be on the street corner with that cart.
Yeah.
With no home.
It's that it's no longer quite in the fore of people's mind, but the bag lady fear. Losing it all with it. Even in the worst Ponzi schemes, people didn't have every last cent. I mean, there may be one or two, but very few. And so the probability of that, but we get caught up in probability and plausibility, and now it's a whole different topic.
Well, and I think we have to have some compassion. You talked about compassion earlier. Women have only been autonomous for a little over 100 years. We have counted on men in our lives. Really, since 1974, we couldn't get the credit card in our name, a mortgage in our own name. So we really, it's 50 years that we've been autonomous. So I have deep compassion over all the things that women have been so wired for a millennial, that we are trying to dissolve all of that. And we can't do it all at once. But gosh, your work is so powerful. And what I really love is that sometimes, again, the woman didn't pay attention. She had a wonderful man in her life. He took care of all the pesky details, and she loved that about him. But boom, especially the sudden death. And now you are a widow, and now you're looking at all the money and you're trying to manage your grief. Talk about how you help women through this very critical and important stage, which I just think is the gift that's just constantly giving about your work in the world, how you transform grief into financial independence.
Well, thank you. And it's so part of me that as a practitioner, I would get asked repeatedly the same questions. And so that's when you know you got to write a book about it. After 9/11, I was a partner in a billion-dollar firm, and we decided to give pro bono service to survivors, and I was the partner chosen to do it. And while it was a huge responsibility, I also knew I was the partner that was best served to do it. I was the only woman in a white male firm. And not that gender was all of it. It's just that I would have the propensity, I thought, that would work, and it did work. And I had 7 widows, 1 widower, and a 12-year-old orphan for 1 year I gave pro bono service to. And then it was a grief on a whole different scale. I mean, this was really different.
And you were living in the area.
Right
I mean, if you were in northern New Jersey.
Right there. Drove by our office, and we drove by the park and ride, and it was still filled with cars and pickup trucks months afterwards. So this prompted me to get grief coach certified. And I actually had written a book first called New Widow Financial Lifeline. And it was a little thin book, and it was intentional so that women could read it. And then when I got grief coach certified, I put grief recovery skills Andy, along with financial tripwires to avoid and financial next steps to take. And I smushed it into one book called My Husband Died Now, A Widow's Guide to Grief Recovery and Smart Financial Decisions. This is a book that stands alone. There's not another one like it that brings together my CFP training and my grief coach certification, plus 42 years boots on the ground with people. And so women are often, even if they've been mathematically astute, CPAs, some grief really, puts your mind into a blender for a while. And I don't want people going, oh, I'm a widow brain. No, there's no need to trivialize this. It's a real emotion. And until America in particular understands how to deal with grief and process grief and give grieving people abeyance and allowance and not to pressure them into decisions, and don't refrain from judging widows' choices, because they're going to have a thought and it's going to come back and they're going to say, I don't want to do that again. And so there has to be this lead and this safe space for widows. My book is in 2 parts, serves as your navigation guide, complete with a combination of valuable information, interweave emotional recovery skills with smart financial strategies, again, using plain English, which is what I'm all about. I'm about translating finances into English. And I say, part 1 is my attempt to help you understand the appropriate context for your relationship with money from this day forward and help you create new money messages into hope and ideas about what it is you'd like to have as your next chapter. And then chapter 13, organizing your finances. If you're like most widows, heck, most women I know, much of your pain and ensuing angst is around the fact that you don't know what you don't know about money. And you see, I think women are a little smarter about this. I think men sometimes don't even think that there's other things that they don't know but I think women are so, focused in, tuned in, and a lot comes from our socialization of lack, and that's not your lane, but that aspect of we don't know enough. Okay, so let's take that to the action stage, because instead of sitting here mired in, I don't know everything I need to know. Yeah, well, if I did a financial plan for you right now, and it was a perfect one, and I did some pretty good ones, I might say, I might set out some general guidelines, and we're going to have a direction, a trajectory, but there is not going to be a step 7 and 8 and 9 and 14 and 18 and 19 and 20 and 21 that's going to actually come true in that order. It's not life. So what we have to do with our money is to bring ourselves into realism and get ourselves in an emergency fund. Someone could die prematurely, get disabled, get laid off, etc. Inflation could happen, etc. So have that emergency fund. And then you're going to have investments that coincide with different time points in your life. So I have a I have a timeline, a goal investment timeline that I invented. And it's really common sense. Also wrote this reflections journal this time. I didn't have it before. And this is an opportunity for women to write down their thoughts, and they're very good questions, if I don't mind saying, after each chapter, because, Andy, there's the cursive writing, the act of cursive writing, not lifting your writing instrument from the page, is very therapeutic, and it penetrates this area of our brain that has dealt with traumatic injury. I don't know if you know that, but it's...
Oh yeah, I do. I'm an artist. I journal every morning with cursive writing, so I'm all about that. And and also, it's like Maya Angelou's poem, once you know better, you do better. So it's having compassion of when you didn't know and excitement for when you do. Did you become a certified grief coach because of 9/11 and what you saw? Or had you already gone there?
No, I always had a desire to know more and so forth. I think that really largely catapulted me towards doing it more swiftly. I just thought, I'm pretty good. I mean, I'm not skeeved out about death. I'm not skeeved out about going into ICU and visiting a friend. Some people are. I'm not. I came from a really huge family. We were in the hospital a lot. And so I was not afraid of it. And so that kind of put me to the top of the, heap in terms of...
But also, you're dealing with people with real life issues. So as a financial planner, their life insurance, whether it's a beloved's death, a child's death, all the horror that can happen, you're there for all the walks of being human, right? In the human journey.
And I think, Andy, the language is what I address really right up front. The language. This woman comes in, and many women did come in. I made a mistake. And I say, Julie, I think you made a misstep. Because stake connotes in the ground, permanent misstep. Okay, we're still walking. All right, we took an off ramp. We're going to get an on-ramp, right? And I say to women, if Warren Buffett can admit to $6 billion missteps with all of the resources he has at his fingertips, who are we to think, who am I to think I'm going to do this perfectly? Lighten up. Now, if you have a cake recipe and you get all your good ingredients and you mix them all together and you put it in the pan, you throw it in the oven for a 360-degree oven for 60 minutes, 350-degree oven for 60 minutes. Not one of us is opening the door after 10 minutes because we're curious to see how it look, because we're going to be disappointed. If the recipe calls for 60 minutes, we're leaving it for 60 minutes. So I'm telling you, the recipe for stocks calls for 5 to 7 years minimum. If you make money more swiftly, God love you, that's not the rule. Let's follow the rule book in the initial stages until we get some confidence around it and we understand our buy decisions and our sell decisions. You're not going to do this on your own, but I'm giving you the framework so that when you connect with a financial coach or a fiduciary planner, you have the vocabulary for the conversation and you can go faster and accelerate your wealth in so doing. So it's important for us to shed the shame, ditch the derogatory language. How can you be expected to know things you weren't taught? And get the information and the answers to your questions. But most of all, if you had a day to live and you were perfectly healthy, what is still yet to be done? If you had a week to live, what is still yet to be done? I do not want us to come to the funeral and be looking over the casket and say, we were going to go to Hawaii. We never did that. Someday I'll language has to go. And so there has to be this comfort level with money. And this is a tool. What do you want this to do?
And for those of you who are listening, not watching, right now, Debra just held up a whole lot of money.
Yeah, 10 hundreds all taped together. And people say, are those real? I say, yes, they are. And so
yeah, I can see the glove.
No one sees me bowing to this. I'm not worshiping this. This is the currency to buy us experiences and maybe gadgets and homes and stuff. Yet once women think of that as currency, and then they think of the act of budgeting as them sliding over into the seat, which is right behind the steering wheel, it feels less of a punishment and more of an empowerment. They go from reactor to creator, and those are the same letters that comprise both words. And I tell you, there's a world of difference. And so if we can take the steering wheel of our own financial car and steer it where we want to go, that is a valuable, valuable asset and a motive for our success. And yet, if we haven't yet dreamed, because I would ask many of my clients, and they're all high net worth, what are you planning on doing with this money? And it was a little like deer in the headlights. And so sometimes they would need a little bit of coaching. And I'd say, well, let's start with this. I suspect you in your later years don't want to live at a standard of living less than you're living now. Oh, no. Okay, so that's where we start.
That's where we start. And we start putting in the calendar what we want to do. Book it, baby, book it. You know what you remind me? You know what you remind me of? You are the Julia Sugarbaker of financial wealth and understanding. Yeah. Any listeners, did you hear her? Didn't she sound like Julia Sugarbaker in Designing Woman, given one of her soliloquies that she's so famous for? I loved that. Just missing the Georgia accent. Otherwise, it was perfect, Debra. Oh my gosh, listener, are you enjoying this conversation as much as I am? If yes, please join the movement to end ageism and celebrate pro-aging. For just $5, you can sponsor the podcast and help amplify inspiring voices like Debra Morrison here, break age-related expectations and stereotypes, and help us reach more listeners worldwide. Please visit buymeacoffee.com/Ande Lyons, ANDELYONS. Let's make aging a journey of joy and possibility together. Thank you so much. So you are clearly thriving after 65, Debra. Share with folks, what does living fully at this stage of life look and feel like for you?
Well, first of all, I care less and less about what other people think. And this is contagious in our age group because we kind of take an assessment, right, of where where we might have been pushed and not to our liking, and now we bring the subconscious conscious. As soon as you have a thought or a feeling or a sense, I want us to bring it forward and to look at it and to question it. If it's good, great, we keep it. If it's not, we ditch it. And so I have a Facebook group called We Can Do It Women, a community group, and the mantra is we're bringing mature women out of the sidelines and into the spotlight. We're fanning the embers that have always been there. I want you to take out a picture of yourself as a little girl, and I want you to look at that little girl, and then I want you to talk to the little girl and say, you know what? I've always wanted to see if I could paint, and I'm going to do it. I've always wanted to do. Grandma Moses picked up her first paintbrush at 78 and made a gazillion dollars. Diana Nyad had tried to swim from Cuba to Florida how many times before she finally at an advanced age? And I love this woman. I met her personally. I was in a swimming contest, which I won most improved swimmer. It was hysterical. We have our pictures together. Find a way.
Diane's holding up the picture, folks. It's so wonderful.
Find a way, Diana Nyad's book photo. And so it's a matter of us being in community with each other so that we can do the atta girls that all the guys have been doing for 100 years. And we can say, you've got this. And you've got this with the uncertainty that accompanies life itself. You see, I was good friends with Dr. Susan Jeffers, who authored the book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, along with 12 other New York Times bestsellers. And I was in practice in finance at the time. And her book says, when so many people are out there doing new things and succeeding, we must conclude fear is not the problem. Rather, how we hold the fear. And so she developed a pain power continuum. And if you haven't seen it, I invite you to look it up. It is completely empowering, and I'm going to hold it up, but for the listeners, you're not going to see it. But go to Google and look up Dr. Susan Jeffers' Pain Power Continuum. On the pain axiom on the side is helplessness, depression, and paralysis. And then you go over to the opposite polar, and that is power, where choice and excitement and action live. And the beauty of this continuum is that if we're helpless or depressed or paralyzed, because we all are in this sometimes, we know that we don't have to buy a house there. We might stay a night or two. And so we drift over in various degrees of acceleration to our power, our personal power. And so you understand that the world is your oyster. The future is yours to create and to plan for and to revel in and to enjoy. We are short on celebration as women. We are short on joy, unadulterated joy. And if we go and make a painting and it looks kind of funny and we laugh at it, that's joy. And it may be the indication that you need several more drafts, or you're not going to do this. You're going to go to something else. But this is no time for us to sit back and say, we did the grandkids, or we did everything, we did the marriage, we did whatever. This is time for us to come into whatever lights us up. And it's high time we figure that out, because with purpose, the stats show we have a likelihood of living 7 more years. And with purpose, and when we smush our money with our purpose and we align the two, we are going to have as much money as we desire for those additional 7 years and all the years between now and then. So this is the aspect of why I bring home money into every conversation, is our relationship with that is such that if you don't want to earn that money for yourself because you're quite happy with the lifestyle you have, there are a bazillion causes and people for whom that tool that you can develop and compound can be leveraged for the greater good. And what gives us better feelings than giving to someone? And yet, we want to fill our own cup up first to overflowing, and from the saucer, which we don't have much anymore, we give to others. And women have had the socialization. It's others, others, others cups. And that is
No, it's called self first, then not selfish, self first. Your happiness brings more happiness to the world. and your ability to take care of yourself allows you to give more to the world. Oh, we got another book coming up into the screen. Share, Deborah.
This is a collaborative book, and my chapter in it, I just read one paragraph because I just had the thought one night, and I said, oh my gosh. Imagine you're on a plane ready for takeoff after the passengers are seated with their seatbelts fastened. The pilot announces, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. If the cabin should lose pressure and the oxygen mask drop from the overhead compartments, men, put your own mask on first. Women, look to the person both on your left and right. Help them put on their masks. Then look 3 rows in front of you and 3 rows behind you for anyone who might need your help to put on their mask. Finally, if you are still conscious, put on your own mask.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that reminder, Deborah. Women, step up. I know we're dealing with a lot of indoctrination. I shared a short on my YouTube channel, listener, that was Liz Friedman, a phenomenal jewelry woman out of New York City, right? And she talked about when she was 25 years old, she went to a cardiologist event in Vermont. And she said she was a heavy smoker. So we all thought the cardiologist was going to give her this great advice to stop smoking, but he didn't. He gave her this advice: go hard. The older you get, go harder. Do not take it easy. And you will have just what Debra said, 7, 10, 20, 30 more years. This is no time to step back, folks. If you've reached the age of 60, it is a privilege, not a chore, to get out there and move your body, bring your gift to the world, because you are still here, and now is your time. You are not shackled by children, and some are not shackled by a spouse or partner any longer. So this is your time, but you do need help. You do need help uncovering and discovering what it is that fuels your purpose, your passion, and darn it all, your pocketbook. Don't ever forget that part. Ka-ching, ka-chang. Don't forget the big fee. And that's what Deborah's here to help you do. Deborah, any last thoughts for everybody? I swear I've had the best time, especially whenever you do another one of your pulpit moments or TED Talk moments. I'm like, that's the Julia Sugarbaker of the finance world for women. She's so amazing. You have definitely busted a lot of ageist biases, etc. You're out there thriving. What last piece of practical advice do you have for women who are a little more tentative or afraid to step into their power at this age? And a lot of times based on the indoctrination of remember the teacher you saw who was, our age probably, or your grandparents, they actually did look old. We are not. We have a lot to give. What's your final piece of advice for folks?
Well, first of all, women tend to be very hard on ourselves. And I get it. We were responsible for the family and the house and the meals. And so, and then, if people divorce, it's like, what the woman do wrong? So I get it. And yet, if we can step outside of that for a moment and realize that when we venture into something new, there are going to be missteps. And I want us to forgive ourselves. I take the analogy, if we're in a room and some little toddler just learning how to walk, and they're a little over a year old or however they are when they start to walk, and they're walking over towards you, and every adult is out there with their hands out. Come on, baby, you can do it. And the kid falls down. There's not a person in the room that says, what the heck is your problem? How come you fell down? Because the child is learning. And you may not be a child in age years, but you are a neophyte in a new area at some point, at some degree of neophyte. And sometimes you disregard everything you know, which I've met with a lot of people, and they come away and say, I met with Debra, and I realized I'm not as bad off as I thought. Hello, precisely. So if we take off the judgment and the 40-pound gunny sack that we put over our own head and our own backs that we're carrying around like we can't, I don't, I lack, then you're going to attract that. Yes, you are. That's the law of physics. And neuroplasticity allows us, and it's very evident that we can groove new neuron pathways. Yes, we can. And 28 days in a row, if you say and think and believe the same thing, it will become your pattern. And I invite you, what's more important than your happiness in the rest of your life? So lighten up on yourself. Talk to your little Debbie inside and say, what is it that you would like to pursue? It's not going to come like right off the top. It's going to fester, and it's going to infiltrate and you are going to then open yourself to tips and tools. And you definitely want to work with someone who's not being paid by commission. That's the ultimate question. If I work with you and I buy any financial product, will you earn a commission or a referral fee? And if the answer is not an absolute no, then run to a person who can answer that. I may have said it in reverse. Will you earn a commission? And if they say no, then you work with them. If they say, oh, yeah, well, I learned a little bit. No. If you ask that question, are you going to earn a commission? And they say absolutely no, that's your person, because they have an average of 24 years experience. I was boots on the ground 42 years with high net worth clients, and I had their kids as clients and their grandkids as clients. So I invite you to look into We Can Do It Women. It's a free group, for goodness sake. I give off kind of off the cuff kinds of ideas. I'm not advising anymore, but I can certainly set some good guidelines and allow you to get into the nuts and bolts of money making. But most importantly, if from the neck up, we don't believe we're going to do it, like Eleanor Roosevelt said, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're probably right. And I say there is no time like now to believe we can, because we can do it, women. Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. Yes, we can. And Debra is absolutely right about the neuroplasticity. This is not toxic positivity, folks. Your brain is wired to take direction. And so if you put it there, even if you have no evidence, put those thoughts in there to help change your life. It's the frontal lobe of your brain, and it will go out there and you will see it's where your focus goes, energy flows. Yeah. It's not law of attraction. That's saying, my garden is free of weeds and nobody's out there weeding. Okay. This is science-based work that you can do on your brain to help lift you out. But still, please work with someone, read Debra's books, find someone in your lives that can help you, hire a good coach, whatever you need to do, please invest in yourself. If you're not a good, go through the book like I have behind me, Don't Retire, Rewire, has all the questions and all the exercises you need in there so you can probe and find out what fuels your passion and purpose, and pocketbook. Hire someone to help you walk through that process. It'll be the best investment you make. You know you would take care of your kid, your dog, your loved ones in a heartbeat. Take care of you with that same conviction. Wow. I am so grateful. All the links to follow Debra everywhere she goes will be in the show notes. Listener, now it's your turn. I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on today's episode? Did something resonate, spark an idea, or remind you of your own story? Join the conversation on LinkedIn or Instagram. Just look for Don't Be Caged by Your Age, or you can leave a message on the website. How cool is that? You can leave me a little voice message. Hit the mic there and say, Ande, I love Debra. Thank you, Debra, for your time and the gift of your presence today. I'm so grateful.
It was my pleasure indeed.
Until next time, listeners, stay curious, stay courageous, and of course, stay Andelicious. Waving from Boston. See you soon. Cheers. Listeners, I'm so grateful you carved out time to tune in and grab the gems from this delicious conversation. Be sure to hop on over to Don't Be Caged by Your Age on LinkedIn or Instagram to share your thoughts about ageism and unretirement. Because in this space, your age doesn't define you, it refines you. If you are inspired by a story you hear, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast. To receive an alert whenever a new show is posted, please join the Don't Be Caged by Your Age newsletter. Every month, you'll receive links to the podcast and helpful resources for creating possibilities for your unretirement days. Thank you for tuning in. I am so excited to hear how you found ways to thrive after 65. Waving from Boston, cheers.